I wish I had better news, but it is all but official. This era of San Francisco 49ers football is officially over. What is good, everybody? Welcome to the 49ers Gold Standard Instant Reaction Podcast on the Fans First Sports Network. I'm Rob Stats Guerrera here with you. What we just saw today was the deep and dying breath of this era of 49ers football. The game is not officially over. It is over for San Francisco. The Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, Juwan Jennings, this era that we have come to know and love and cherish is over now. It's dead. It's done. And that's it. Now we have to pick up the pieces and move on. I'm going to be joined by Levin Black in a minute here. I just decided to spring this on him that we're starting early. I see all the comments in the chat. And I'll just say this, and we'll talk about it, but people are going to see that the Packers put up 38 points, and they're going to say, oh, the defense. The defense was not the problem today. It was the 49ers offense. The defense gave them chances to get back into the game as we welcome in Levin Black. The offense didn't take them. Every time the 49ers defense made a stop and allowed the 49ers to get the ball back and make it a one-possession game, the offense whiffed.
Let's call it a spade a spade. Kyle Shanahan is not coaching well right now, and these players have quit. That's the situation. The players are checked out, especially Deebo Samuel.
Deebo. Oh, my God.
Yeah, we're going to talk plenty about Deebo, but it's everybody. It is a complete failure, and I do think that you do have to start at the top. There's zero accountability. Kyle never takes blame for anything. It's always about execution. When your special teams is one of the worst of all time and you won't fire the coach, how can you expect the players to follow through with anything? They know they're not going to get punished because you can't punish me if you're not punishing that guy for coaching terribly. So that's just the overall thing that's failing this team, is that there's no accountability because Kyle can't even look in the mirror at himself.
Deebo Samuel was awful today. I mean, the 49ers go into halftime, they're down 17-7. They get the ball back. First of all, coming out of halftime, Deebo returns the only good thing he did, the kick return, and they call a holding on Eric Saubert, which was not a holding in my opinion. And all of a sudden you go from being on the 10-yard line of the Packers to your own 20-yard line. It was a huge, if they score a touchdown on that possession, Levin, who the hell knows what happens in the game? But, Deebo is just balls right through his hands. Brandon Allen's interception goes right through Deebo Samuel's hands on a critical possession. And the ball gets intercepted, and not just intercepted, but of course returned all the way to the red zone, setting up the Packers defense for an easy touchdown. Like critical times in this game, Deebo was a ghost. Between that and the penalties, just a terrible, terrible showing today.
If you want to be the loudmouth, you want to be the guy that calls out other people, screams lock in, you better freaking back it up. And if you don't, then you don't need to be a captain, and you do not need to be on the field. If I am Kyle Shanahan, Pearsall is starting over Deebo next week. Let's see what Pearsall looks like in that role, because that's the role he's most likely to try to occupy next season. Let's see what he's got. And Deebo, an example needs to be set. You want to call out the kicker and push a teammate in the throat one week and then come out and drop the ball and ruin your team's chances the next week? You don't need to be a captain on this team.
You're not wrong. In fact, you're right. Believe it or not. Andre Garibay, YouTube channel member, says both sides of the ball suck. Offensive line is pathetic. Defensive line is awful. Run defense is trash. Awful special teams. Tons of penalties. Kyle has regressed. Offensive line looks like a Jimmy. Oh, offense looks like a Jimmy. Sorry. Robotic, slow crap offense all over again. It was a maddening day because the Packers wanted to give this game to the 49ers. The Niners defense dropped 2 interceptions on the day, which would have made a huge difference, obviously. And it was there. And it was like the reverse of the games that we've seen. It was the 49ers hanging around, right? If situations were reversed and I was a Packer fan, I would have been like, you can't let teams hang around. And then that's what the Niners were doing all day. And they just didn't make that final push that other teams have made against the 49ers last year. Or this year, excuse me. Warlock says, let's hear your excuses, stats. Kyle schemed them open. Allen didn't throw to them. Defense only allowed 38 points. If they win out, they make the Super Bowl. Admit this team isn't good. Get rid of Deebo. I've said this team isn't good. What are we talking about? And Allen was okay today. He was okay. He could have been better. He fumbled a couple of times. But, again.
Let's put it in real perspective. Okay for being a backup. Okay for the expectations going in. Not if that was Brock Purdy, you'd be like, that's a terrible game for Brock Purdy. It's because he's Brandon Allen. It's a okay game for your backup. It's a game that's good enough to at least give you a chance if other things are going your way.
Like the one interception he has, it's not his fault. It goes right through Deebo Samuel's hands at the Packers 26-yard line. Like right through 3rd and 8. Clang. That's not Allen's fault. I agree with you. My expectations were a little lower. That's fair. But, they could have won this game today. They absolutely could have won this game. The penalty yardage was crippling. Every time there was a return, there was a penalty. It was unbelievable. But
it's everything. The penalties were backbreakers, but the drop was a backbreaker by Deebo. The play calling was terrible, especially the run game. They kept calling stretch runs. This is 3 weeks in a row I've been complaining about them, that your blocking is not good enough to try to get the edge on a run. It's too slow to develop. You need to run up the middle. Guess what? When they run up the middle, they're finding success, especially with Jordan Mason, because Jordan Mason is just going downhill. Meanwhile, Christian McCaffrey is hesitating a lot. Christian McCaffrey is like, this isn't the run blocking I'm used to. I'm going to sit and dance around and wait for the hole to open because the hole is definitely going to open instead of just punching it and getting what you can. Like, it's just, it's everything. The players are making terrible mistakes, and a lot of them are the captains, the leaders. And you also have coaching other than, I would say Nick Sorensen's doing a decent job. He's not great, but he's doing good enough that if the offense gave him anything, it would look a lot better. I know they gave up 38 points. But other than him, the offensive line is garbage. So your offensive line coach, you got a question. The special teams is terrible, and Kyle Shanahan is failing. It's the coaching staff, the players, the captains. It's all of it. And that's why after today, I am of the opinion it's not just a retool. It's not change out a couple players. It's I'm tearing it down other than maybe a dozen players. Like, I'm getting rid of half or maybe more than half of the starters.
Levin's ready to rip the Band-Aid off. Ethan Parrish says this game cleared it up, that this team needs a refresh. Excited to see what they do this offseason. Deebo will be a Raider. Black is slimming. Ooh, that's just mean. Real OBJ CDT says trade CMC for picks and rebuild with Mason. Christian McCaffrey should not play another game the rest of the season. Neither should Nick Bosa. They shouldn't play. It's about, if you want to do anything.
Neither should Deebo, because Deebo is in the injury guarantee situation.
Deebo should be in the doghouse, really, is where but he seems to avoid it no matter what he does. But if you want to do anything in 2025, why are you playing Christian McCaffrey the rest of the year? Why? Who cares? Just bench Christian McCaffrey the rest of the year. Bench Nick Bosa. Let them rest. Dre Greenlaw, don't worry about it, dude. You got hurt in the Super Bowl. You tore your Achilles. Don't worry about it. Rest up so that when you come back in 2025, we get as close to the old Dre Greenlaw as possible. That's my philosophy.
Can I make a bold prediction?
Yes, I suppose.
After this loss, Purdy goes on IR this week.
Yep. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about the game, but I'll say this clearly he's more injured than they're saying. He's had 2 MRIs now.
Brandon Allen broke his finger 2 weeks ago and nobody knew.
Right. He was never even on the injury report.
Yeah, that they should get a fine for that. How can you not be on the injury report if you broke a finger?
Chris Maldonado says this team is irritating. Why not play Dobbs? I didn't think that, I didn't see a play where, if Josh Dobbs is in, they win this game. I don't know that I would say that. Larkin, YouTube channel member, says completely agree. This era is over. No fight, no heart. Absolutely time for a reset. More missed tackles than points. What the F? Yeah, they had 20. It may be higher. The last I saw it was 20 missed tackles by the 49ers defense. And I thought Brady made a good point. The running backs are getting through the defensive line without being stopped. And so that when they encounter linebackers and members of the secondary, they've got a full head of steam. And it's really hard to stop somebody when they have a full head of steam, to tackle them one-on-one, or when you make contact to stop them from going forward. And we saw that a ton today and really all year long. Guys would hit the 49ers and they would gain 2, 3, 4, 5 more yards. It was consistent, and we saw it again today. And I think it's because, like Brady pointed out, the defensive line was getting gashed and holes were opening.
I'm going to ask you a question because I'm trying to think in my head of when I would go, but you have a terrible tendency to watch the worst losses of the 49ers over and over again. When has there been a worse loss for the 49ers? Because in terms of talent level to actual performance, because I'm going probably back to the Harbaugh, like 2014. I can't remember an exact blowout, but I'm guessing they had a blowout during one game of that season. But like 2015, talent's not there. 2016, talent's not there. 2017, talent's not there. So if they get blown out, you're expecting it. 2018, you got the injury stuff. 2019, they didn't get blown out. You know what I mean? They haven't had like a crazy blowout. This is the first one that I can remember in at least a decade where it's, you have the talent and everybody, coaching and players, just crap the bed.
November 7th, 2021, Colt McCoy and the Cardinals stomped the 49ers 31-17. Remember, the Cardinals were so beat up. They had like no Hopkins. They had no Kyler. That was bad.
But wasn't that close until the end?
Still 30. It should never have been close.
I know, but that was like a close game where they're playing down to their opponent and then they gave it up at the end.
No, it wasn't.
It was
30. It was 24. It was 17-7 at halftime. It was 31-14 going into the fourth quarter.
Okay, fair enough.
Josh Dubow tweeted, "This is the third most lopsided loss under Kyle Shanahan. 40-10 they lost to the Cowboys in 2017, 39-10 to the Rams in 2018, and 38-10 today." Yeah, this wouldn't. I mean, I thought this would be the final score going in. If you told me before the game started it was going to be 38-10, I would have been like, yeah, that makes sense. But the way that it was actually a game for much of the day, and you didn't think it was going to be a game for much of the day, because after the 49ers ran 3 plays in the first quarter, 3 plays, they had more penalties than rushing yards in the first half. The Niners had 3 rushing yards in the first half. It did not look like it was going to be a game. Before they threw that flag on that kick return in the second half, Levin, I was thinking, oh my God, we might pull this out.
The way they went into halftime, and I want to curse them for it, gave me like the slightest slimmer of hope.
Yep.
And it's like, why bring me back and give me the slightest slimmer of hope? You know what I mean? Like,
right. Exactly. Like, why are you doing this?
I posted it on, I think only on Blue Sky. I don't think I put it on Twitter. I said, this is the no fun season. There's not been a single game this year that I would categorize as like, it was really fun. Yes, they've won 5 games, but all of them have been slogs. You know what I mean? All of them have been like, what are they doing? And then they pulled out some of them at the end. There hasn't been a game where you just come in and you're smiling throughout. Every single game has either been the crap fest that was today, or you're sitting on the edge of your seat going, what are they doing? Just put their team away.
Frank Vasquez says, Kyle's play calling sucks. He needs to go, doesn't run Mason. You want to hear the weirdest stat line ever? Jordan Mason had 3 carries for 8 yards in the game with a long of 16 yards.
What play did he lose all those on?
I don't know.
It must have been right at the end, because
they must have done something.
I didn't see, because I did not see him lose any big yards. I think he had 2 carries for 21 yards. So it had to have come on maybe a crazy scramble at the end. I don't know.
I think that the run blocking is the bigger issue, but I do think, especially like in this game, they should have played Mason a little more, because the McCaffrey is not quite himself, and there's just no reason that the split.
Call it what it is. The run blocking is atrocious.
Yes.
But McCaffrey is making it worse because he is not running the ball well. He is hesitating, like I said. He sits and he dances waiting for a hole that's not coming. Recognize you don't have this all-world run blocking in front of you and just run up and get the 2 to 3 yards and hope every so often you get a 10+1 to get your average up. Because that's the reality of what running the ball is behind this team. And that's what Jordan Mason does. He goes and he hits the hole. This is exactly the type of running that this scheme that Mike Shanahan and Kyle Shanahan have hated. That they get the ball and they dance around looking for a hole rather than just hitting it, getting upfield, and finding the hole on the way.
If you're watching the stream right now, you see a picture of Kyle Shanahan, just angry face Kyle Shanahan. It was probably the most fired up I've seen Kyle on the sidelines.
I photoshopped that.
He was complaining about something. Matthew McBride says Brandon Allen has no business starting today. John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan need to be held accountable for this roster. They've had the best roster in the sport for half a decade. They are held accountable for it. They got contract extensions.
It's a really good draft class too.
And it's a really good draft class. JCG 1987 says broken finger over Dobbs. Dobbs didn't kiss ass enough.
That's good emoji use.
Yes, it is. Andre Garibay. Kyle has regressed so much. His offense sucks. The run defense sucks. Stats. Kyle has lost his team. The team needs to be blown up. # top 10 draft pick. Again, I don't think the offense was as bad as people think, especially last week. Today, you had a backup quarterback in there. They were in the game for a large part of it. Ultimately, Brandon Allen was 17 of 29 for 199 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Christian McCaffrey, 11 carries, 31 yards. Ugh.
There's only one part of that comment that I disagree with. His offense sucks. I wouldn't put them quite in the suck. Today, obviously, yes. But overall, the season, they don't suck. But has he regressed a lot? Heck, yes. His play calling is much worse. You have so many examples. You have him running when he should be passing. You have him passing when he should be running. You have the screens to juice. You have these stretch plays that he won't stop doing despite them having statistically horrendous results. He's just ignoring it and keeps trying the same thing over and over again rather than adjusting. For once, he didn't do the Deebo end around this week that hasn't worked in 2 years. He has not adjusted anything. He's still trying to run an outdated offense. The run defense has sucked. Kyle, I do think, has lost a good bit of this team. I think a lot of this team is tuning out. Whether that's specific to Kyle or not, I don't know. But I think this team has lost. I think a majority of that locker room is looking at next year. Where am I going to be at next year?
I think they are now. I'll tell you that because clearly it's over this year. Over 1,000 people watching right now. Thank you so much. If this is your first time watching, please give us a like and a subscribe. You can find the audio podcast for the 49ers Gold Standard wherever you get your audio pods. Give us a chance. I promise you, we won't let you down with our coverage. You're joining at a bit of a low point in terms of the season in this regime, I must say, much like Wolverine joining the MCU. Matthew Rowley says, this team is pathetic. I don't care about the injuries. That was embarrassing. Christian McCaffrey, another fumble, which he does far too often. He doesn't really fumble that much. We remember the fumbles because they've been crushing, but he doesn't really fumble that much. Starting quarterback with a broken finger while Dobbs is right there. Fire all. I get it, man. This season hurts. It's painful, right? It sucks watching this and knowing what we have coming up next week and against Detroit and against the other teams. It's terrible. It sucks and it hurts and I'm bleeding with you, but I'm trying to have a little bit of perspective here. I know it's awful to watch. Watching the first quarter of that game was like, if I didn't have to watch the game because of my job, I might have turned it off. That's how bad it was. It was non-competitive, but I still am not out on everybody. I'm not fire everybody. Changes? Hell yeah. There need to be changes, but I'm not there yet. And look, I've been fire other people. I have been. I'm just not there yet. Real OBJ CDT says, when the head coach says 59 is playing well, he needs to be fired. Devondre Campbell. Matthew McBride says, Allen isn't a backup. He is not garbage. Okay.
I think he probably meant he is garbage.
Isn't a backup. He is garbage. That would make more sense because otherwise the comment contradicts itself.
Yeah.
Chris Maldonado says, I feel like this team is giving up. Deebo isn't locked in, and special teams is wet trash / toilet paper, and dumpster juice changes need to be made 100%. I'm interested to see what Kyle Shanahan says after this game, Levin.
Well, if you go to my Twitter page, you'll see exactly what he's going to say because I photoshopped that photo you showed of him earlier, and it's him saying, not my fault. Because that's what he's going to do. He doesn't take accountability. He's going to say execution. The penalties were crushing. We need to be better. That's what he's going to say. He's not going to say I'm not pushing the right buttons. The team is undisciplined, and when a team is undisciplined, that falls on the coach. That's what he should be saying.
Chris Peterson asked Tim Kawakami, is it possible Kyle feels hot pressure after this season, expecting 49ers to finish with maybe 7 or 8 wins? Tim says, you never know on this stuff, especially if it looks terrible through December, but presuming reasonable effort the rest of the way and not some long losing streak, I don't think Kyle is in trouble. Now, if 2025 turns out also like this, different story. I completely agree with that. That last part with Tim, I totally agree.
Yeah. I agree with that, but I think what Tim is saying, without saying it right out, is I think he agrees with me, because he said unless December continues this and has a long winning streak,
right?
Because that's where I fall. I would have come into this season saying they could have a 5-win season and there's a 0.0% chance Kyle Shanahan is being fired. I don't think it's 0 anymore. If they have a final 6 games that look like this game, there is a chance I would want to have a conversation with him and take some control away from him. Like I'm going to approach him and say, I want you to remain. If I'm Jed York, I approach him and I say, I want you to remain as head coach, but the special teams is fired tomorrow. You're going to look for a defensive coordinator that has experience that can help you adjust your offense. Because Sorensen has not been bad, but he is, and there's plenty of videos out there, his offense is bland. It lacks creativity. I think there's nothing there. Yes, his defense. There's nothing there that helps him, that allows him to say, hey, Kyle, this is what I'm seeing of your offense. Adjust these things. I think Kyle needs some of that. And I'm telling him, you're changing some philosophies. You're going to be changing. You are going to go after offensive linemen. You do not have final say on this roster. If he's willing to accept getting,
no, he's going to say, fire me.
Right. And if he does, then I say, okay, you're still not willing to look in the mirror. So when you're sitting your ass at home during the offseason, you can look in the mirror and hopefully you're better in the future with whatever team signs you. Because if he's not willing to look in the mirror and adjust the things that are problems, it's not going to work out. And why waste another year?
He's not going to let Jed York dictate football to him. That is never happening. He'll say, look, if you don't like
Jed York doesn't make the decision on what the changes are, but he says, these are the changes you have to be willing to make. If you're unwilling to make these, then you're unwilling to address the problems that exist, and that's not going to be tenable. That is not going. If you don't fix your problems, you're going to have the same thing happen next year. So if Kyle doesn't want to listen, now, like I said, this is if the final 6 games look similar to this game. If they go out and they win 2 of the games, 3 of the games, and there's some semblance of effort and turnaround and optimism, then I'm not there. I'm giving him next year. But if it's a complete train wreck and he's unwilling to address anything, then I can't allow that to continue.
Can I say something that's going to make you really mad?
I'm already there, so I'm biding my time because I'm wanting to cuss out the world right now because I'm pissed off.
They're a game out of first place in the division.
Yeah, there is that chance that they go out and they go like, I don't know, 3-3, but they win the divisional games and they end up getting in the playoffs by some miracle because the rest of the division falls apart.
It's crazy to say, but
this will be the ultimate joke. We're going to crap all over this team. I got tons of tweets out there saying this team's over, rebuild it, and they're going to luck into the playoffs at 8-9 or 9-8 and then win the Super Bowl. And this will be the Super Bowl year.
No, the problem is they're going to get schmotzed at Buffalo next week.
Oh, yeah. And it's going to fall apart. I'm waiting for the blame game to jump.
They're going to, well, that's going to be a key thing too. Down the stretch, do you see the infighting? Do you see that kind of thing? That's going to be part of it too. They're going to get crushed when they play the Lions. So yeah, it's going to get darker before it gets brighter.
And if you see things like what Deebo did with Tabor Pepper, if you see those things and Kyle continues to not address it, then that's a problem for me. I know he said he addressed it. He probably said, hey, don't do that. Oh, you're my guy. Don't do that. I don't want to have to punish you. We don't know what he said behind closed doors. But at some point, if things like that are happening publicly, they have to be addressed publicly. That doesn't mean you completely throw your player under the bus. But in the post-game press conference, you don't avoid it. You don't say, well, I don't know. I don't know what happened. You say what Deebo did was unacceptable. you name it. You know what I mean? If it happens publicly at some point,
Well,
you have to address it publicly.
He did say you don't want Deebo throwing a punch there. He did say that publicly. He said it on the conference call the day after the game. He didn't say it immediately after the game. He said,
but he didn't say who was to blame for the situation. He said that it was addressed and squashed. He didn't say whether Deebo crossed the line or whether Tabor was out of line.
He did say it was addressed and squashed.
Yeah, I'm saying that's all he said. You don't know who was at fault. You know what I mean? I'm saying if that happens and you keep having infighting, you can't allow it by keep saying, oh, we're going to address it behind closed doors. You got to start publicly bringing it because it's happening in public and it's going to continue to happen in public if they can get away with having deniability. Because right now, Deebo has deniability that it was his fault. Tabor has deniability that it was his fault. Nobody knows who's at fault because it only happened behind closed doors when they addressed it.
Just seeing a little bit in the post game now, Kyle Shanahan said Aaron Banks is dealing with a suspected concussion. I don't want to wish harm on anybody. That's terrible. Hopefully he's okay. Not concussed, first of all, and hopefully he's okay. Obi-Wan49 says, what's the defense for Kyle still? It's not that we lost, but how? Penalty's still an issue. Lack of Mason, the complicated crowded play that led to fumble. The defense of Kyle Shanahan is they were just in the Super Bowl last year and they led the offense in touchdown.
Yeah, I mean, that's where you're at.
Yeah.
You are where you were at, and I'm close, but not quite as far as you. You are at, if you just made a Super Bowl, you can have a terrible year the following year. You're still going to get one more year because you just made the Super Bowl.
His second Super Bowl.
Right. I am at, if you just made a Super Bowl, you're going to get another year, no matter how bad it was, unless I think you completely lost that team and there's no coming back.
But if you lost the team, you can change out the roster in the offseason. So then you get a new team. So
if you got the quarterback and Kittle and Trent Williams that are saying, look, we're done with that guy, you can't come back from that.
Why would Brock say that he's done with Kyle?
I'm just saying these are theoreticals. We don't know how people truly feel. We have no clue. I seriously doubt they feel. It certainly seems like he still has there's a divide on this team, and part of that is Kyle's fault. You're either one of the elite players, and that makes you one of Kyle's guys who can do no wrong, or you're one of the other guys that's immediately replaceable for a single mistake.
This is one sentence from Kyle's post-game presser, so I don't know the context or anything else he said, but, quote, we all got embarrassed. No one played great. That is a fact. I don't know if he said anything about the coaching. I don't know. That's just David Lombardi tweeted that sentence, so I just wanted to read it to you. Let's get to some super chats because people have been waiting. Matthew McBride says Brandon Allen is hot garbage. Christian McCaffrey isn't ready. I don't think you're the only one that has that opinion, Matthew. Maynard Keenan, what's up, Maynard? Says, look at the fire the Packers have after making a play. That's what this team is lacking. They're not hungry, plain and simple. Yeah, they don't have the same fire that they've had. That's true. It's been half a decade. They're tired. It's over. It's over for this group. They're not getting that back. Once that's gone, you don't get it back. And that's why they do have to.
Can I get the pat on the back for saying that coming into the season that I didn't think they were mentally there anymore?
No. JCG 1987 says Deebo equals George Pickens' work ethic joke of a captain. Yeah, the fact that Deebo is a captain is a joke. Daza 0187 says Deebo should be benched. He can't catch the ball. I hope Tabor told him to lock in after his drop led to an interception. Yeah. No.
So while we're on Deebo, not just this year, not just last year, but the last 3 seasons, he has failed to average 60 yards per game.
Mm-hmm.
He is averaging about 54 yards, or actually with this game, probably down to about 53 yards per game over the last 3 years. Guess what he averaged per game? And that means taking out the games that he's missed due to injury. So his injuries aren't costing him in that. Guess what he averaged before the 1 year that he was great? The same numbers.
Yep.
He's literally, this is year, 6 for him? Is it 6 or 7? I can't even remember.
He's drafted in 19.
This is year 6 for him. And he's had 1 year of averaging more than 60 receiving yards per game. He is not a starting caliber NFL wide receiver. Is he a great offensive weapon to have? He at least used to be. I'm unconvinced if he's still that. It looks like the wheels might have fallen off. But he's not somebody that you want starting and taking 50 snaps per game. You want him to be somebody that is your third option as a wide receiver and comes in and has these special plays where he can get the ball in space.
Patrick Lucero says, what is good? Not the 49ers right now. Dark days. I agree. Warlock says, is there a chance we give Rodgers a try for 2025?
I just puked.
Yes, I think there is a chance they explore that. Now, I don't want it for many, many, many reasons.
Can you imagine Rodgers and Kyle in the same room?
And this offensive line? Yeah, no, thank you. But
no, I will say Rodgers is not terrible. I think in the right situation, he could still have kind of like a Brady-esque finish. But his attitude is a major, major, major problem. And there's no way that mixes with the arrogance of Kyle.
YouTube channel member says, Deebo, Juice, Mooney, Huff, Campbell, and Hargrave should be gone next season. I completely agree. Time for a retool. Actually, they can leave Campbell in Green Bay. Hopefully as a spare key for his old house up there. That's funny. That's not bad. Good job by you. Andre Garibay says, how have they regressed this much when most of last year's team is here? Kyle has lost this team. They need to rebuild both on offensive line and defensive line in the draft. Well, no Trent Williams today. No Nick Bosa today. Christian McCaffrey clearly a shell of himself. No Brandon Ayuk. Like, that's how. You know, like they've been hit hard by injuries this year. Now, they still have a lot of talent left for sure, but part of it is the injuries. That's going to have an effect.
Yes, the injuries have had an effect. Like I said, it's everything. Injuries have been, yes, bad. The team is not mentally tough anymore. Like we've said for a few weeks now, this used to be the team that talked openly about wanting to go and get into a slugfest with the other team. They wanted to get into a fight. They wanted that physical matchup. Now they run from it. Now they cower. They can't take it. They fold when it gets mentally tough. When the going gets tough, they fold. And Kyle Shanahan has not been coaching well. Special teams obviously has not been coaching well.
Oh, God.
So it's everything. The coaching has regressed. The players are mentally completely fatigued. And there's been a bunch of injuries that have made it much worse.
Miguel says, so what was the game plan this week? Get the guy with Achilles tendonitis on the perimeter?
Exactly. Like, I don't get it. I don't get the stretch. They lose yards more often than not on those stretch runs. What are you doing? Why are you still running that?
At one point, they put up a graphic. It was 7 rushes for 11 yards on outside runs on the day. So they have not been blocking them up well. They haven't been being able to overcome that otherwise. Nees says Buffalo is going to run up 50. Yeah, they might. Matthew McBride says if John and Kyle are so good at putting this roster together, then we should win with all the injuries. Well, no, come on. So that means you could have unlimited injuries. I mean, your best players, Trent Williams, Brock Purdy, and Nick Bosa, were all out in this game. Take the 3 best players off of any other team and let's see how they look. In addition to some others that also aren't there. So
take Patrick Mahomes
right
off the Chiefs, and they have 2 wins this year. Take Patrick Mahomes and Chris Jones
right
off the Chiefs, and they have no wins this year.
So yeah, you can't just say
they have 10, which is just annoying. They did it again today.
You can't just say, well, no matter what the injuries are. Like, I don't think that's being fair. Perfect Blackness says, I've lost faith in Shanahan. He's a prisoner of his scheme and refuses to coach to the situation. He's an OC that hasn't learned to be a head coach and will not adjust. That is one criticism of him that drives me crazy. He's an OC. So all these wins just happened to Kyle Shanahan, right? They just happened to him. He's an offensive coordinator, but they just happened to him. He built up the roster from nothing. He hired multiple really good defensive coordinators in Robert Saleh and DeMeco Ryans, right? No, that just happened to him. He doesn't get any credit for that because he's just the OC. Like, no.
Right. He gets credit for that hiring. But I do think you would agree when it comes to the decisions that head coaches have to make in game management, he's not good at it.
He has struggled big time in that area. I agree with that. But there are a lot of head coaches that are bad at that. Mike Tomlin just butchered the game management the other day on Thursday night. Like, Kyle's other guys that you would say are head coaches and not coordinators are also bad at game management is my point. There are a lot of head coaches that are. I'm stunned at how many are, to be honest with you. Not that excuses it. He did go for it on 4th down today, which I was happy about. I thought it was a good decision to go for it on 4th down. Unfortunately, it was incomplete, but at least they tried. Red and Gold Al says, don't trust this front office with a top 10 pick. Yeah, their first round picks have been dicey, to say the least. Ace Bruh says, Kyle loses coaches every year, takes this team to 4 out of 5 NFC championship games, injuries, spoiled fan base. I agree. I think there are a lot of spoiled fans out there. There are a lot of spoiled 49er fans that are trying to hold the team to this standard that has only been established because of Kyle Shanahan. That is the part that bothers me. The only reason we're like, oh, Super Bowl or bust or all that stuff is because of everything that Kyle Shanahan has done. That is also true. You can't deny that. They were good 50 years ago in the 80s. Great. So that's the standard. Like, come on, man. Come on.
40 years ago. I'm not that old.
That's true. I did age us a little bit. Real OBJ CDT says, if I'm Warner, I'm asking for a trade or a holdout.
I
don't think
it depends on what they're doing this offseason.
Right. Mr. J Fizz says, I wish I could have watched the second half of the game. NFL Network were jerks for switching it to the Raider game and Seahawks game. This game was on nationally, Mr. J Fizz. It was the national Fox game.
Is he international?
I don't know. What baffles me is that the Seahawks already have a live feed. Why? I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. Real OBJ CDT says Purdy makes that first down where Allen missed by 5 yards. I mean, if we want to get back into the specifics of this game, they had a drive where they are motoring down the field and they are picking up first downs and getting back into it. And then Allen has Juwan Jennings wide open over the middle of the field and just throws it, just threw it behind him and it was incomplete. Those little, that
was first down.
Yeah, it was a first down. And then they ran.
The first down they shouldn't have been passing on. That was my criticism. Jordan Mason ran up the middle, got a huge gain, and they went pass, turnover on downs.
But, why is it a bad play call to pass after the Mason run? Jennings was wide open.
Because they finally had a good run. Run Mason again and see what happens.
The quarterback screwed it up. The play call worked, man. He's wide open.
I understand, but there's no point of risking that. And as I said on Twitter, because I was arguing about this for half a quarter, you don't trust a backup quarterback. So if your run game, if you find something that works in the run game, run it again. See if it works. Because you don't want to put the ball in the backup's hands if you don't have to. Mason ran up the middle, found great success, and he didn't touch the ball again for 2 quarters.
Yeah, well, that's a different argument. That is a different argument than what we were just talking about. Just Another Villain says this seems hard to watch right now. Watching the game was painful. I actually said it was less stressful. It started out less stressful for me because I had no expectations. I expected the Packers to dominate. The Packers get the ball. They go right down the field. They put the touchdown in. Niners get the ball back. They do nothing. Green Bay gets it back. They kick the field goal. They're up 2 scores. I'm like, yeah, this is what I expected. But then the 49ers kind of bowed up, right? They get the touchdown to make it 17-7. They stop Green Bay at the end right before halftime. And you're like, oh my God, we're getting the ball coming out of halftime and we're only down 10 as bad as we've played. And then the Deebo return gets called back. They still drive down the field, but unfortunately that was the turnover on downs possession that we talked about. The defense forces the 3 and out again. So the Niners get the ball back again in the third quarter, again, a chance to make it a 1-score game. And they start moving down the field. McCaffrey goes up the middle for 9. They get a first down. McCaffrey ekes out 3 yards. They hit Kittle for 31 yards on a play down the seam, which was beautiful. George Kittle is so freaking good, man. And then they run it to Christian McCaffrey. They run it to Christian McCaffrey again. And then on 3rd and 8, they pass. So they did the thing you wanted them to do, Levin, right? They get the first down. They run it. They run it again. Then it's 3rd and 8. You have to put the ball in the hands of Brandon Allen. He throws. Deebo Samuel is there. The ball goes through both of Deebo Samuel's hands, tipped up, intercepted. Packers return it all the way to the 49ers 26-yard line. Green Bay scored, and it was essentially over after that.
Yeah, they didn't do what I wanted because they ran a stretch play on first down. That's why it was 3rd and long, because he refuses to run up the middle. It's look, if they came into this game and they just completely crapped the bed right away where they just got pushed around, I wouldn't have probably been all that angry coming in, because that's kind of what I expect. They're down so many players. I kind of expected that. It's the way they lost. It's unacceptable. The penalties. They had 12 men on the field on back-to-back snaps on defense.
Yeah, that was
it's the mental mistakes that I cannot accept. Deebo drops a pass. They have the fumble by McCaffrey and all those penalties. That's what pissed me off. It's the way they lost is undisciplined. It's unprofessional, to be frank. They are not doing their jobs. If they just got beat because they're on the road in Green Bay and they're down so many guys, I could have accepted that. But I cannot accept going out there and constantly making mental mistakes.
Shafro says, good game, you guys. I wish we could have played you guys healthy. Hopefully you guys can make a miracle run. Yeah. Thanks, Shafro. That sounds like a Packer fan you should be in a good mood, but you could have been a lot harder. And you could tell the Packers, like, they're still throwing the ball up multiple scores. They remember that NFC Championship game in 2019 where the Niners just absolutely demolished them. And they remembered, obviously,
and last year.
lost last year. Yeah. Like, and I'm not mad at them. Dude, it's a professional field, man. You run it up. Let the other team stop you. Oscar says, stats, I've heard you list dozens of frustrations with this team on all their ugly plays this year, but some we can't even question Shanahan's effectiveness over the team now. Celebrate two-time NFC champions. Yeah, I do celebrate the NFC Championship game performances. Look where they were today. Would you rather the NFC Championship game performance or the performance we saw today? Like, I know which one I would pick. Moonman Ed. And again, I'm not saying there's not problems. Like, I feel like people don't hear me when I defend Kyle Shanahan. Just because I don't want Kyle Shanahan fired doesn't mean he's perfect. There's things he can fix for sure. I'm with you. How many times have I talked about Kyle's game management? I've talked about it for years, right? I'm just not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. They do need to fix some things. And if next year looks like this, then we can talk about firing Kyle Shanahan. But not now. That's it. And I hope that people understand where I'm coming from.
I know a baby that was fired this week, but that's kind of private stuff that you probably don't want to get into.
Oh, yeah, don't do that. Don't say that. That's not nice. Moonman Ed says, I think Deebo's biggest mistake was going from 19 to 1. You know what? I agree. And regardless, I'm looking forward to the offseason. Stay patient, y'all. 19 to 1, not a good look. Mr. J Fizz says, since Purdy was hurt and Allen comes into play in replace of Purdy, why not have the other quarterbacks get reps in a live game, especially for the second half? I don't know what he's asking. Do you?
I think he's saying he wanted Dobbs to get live reps because you might as well. But I don't understand the point. He's nothing of the future.
Yeah,
but that's one of the problems I have. I don't agree with ever having your starter and two veteran backups. There should always be, whether he's second string or third string, one quarterback on this roster that is very young on their rookie contract with a chance to be something.
Tanner Mordecai is on the practice squad. So, like, if you're not going to play Dobbs, why not, along those lines, I agree with you. Like, neither one of these guys is the future of the 49ers, Dobbs or Brandon Allen. So, whatever. Look, I mean, that's sort of how they fell into Purdy, right? The two guys got hurt. He was the only one there. So they played him, and it was like, oh, we may have something here. Matthew Rowley says, Rob, what's your defense for Kyle's refusal to play the most talented player regardless of his personal feelings? It has always cost the team at the margins, but now it's costing them games. I assume you're talking about Mason there. I don't know.
Mason, maybe Cowing, could be talking about Ayuk in the past. I mean, this could be, it is kind of a thing that if you're a young player, he's not going to play you over a veteran, even if you're better.
It seems like that. To our eyes, they look better. Now, maybe going forward, see, they're only a game out, though. So Kyle's not going to make that switch, right? Because in his mind, it's like, hey, we're a game out of the division. Who knows what can happen? But, I mean, we would like to see. I don't want to see Chris Conley in a game ever again. Play Jacob Cowing, even if he's not ready, because you help him get ready for next year. That's the thing. And, Kyle really hasn't had to think about that because he's been in like Super Bowl or bust mode for so long. He needs to switch his thinking. He probably won't until the division is gone completely. But, that's what I would hope for. Donkey Teeth says, I agree this was the least PO'd I've been all year, but I'm still mad at Shanahan's for doghousing Jordan Mason. There is a conference call tomorrow. Maybe I need to hop on the conference call and be like, why Christian McCaffrey, like, enough?
The way you ask it is, what does Jordan Mason have to do to get on the field more when Christian McCaffrey is not running the ball effectively?
Yeah, I think
you got to say that second part to him, because otherwise he'll just placate or he'll just go, well, I'm not going to put him in over Christian McCaffrey. He's great, and ignore what the results have been.
I think he's going to say that anyway, but you're right. I think it's worth asking. I also want to ask about Brock. I think that Brock's injury is way more significant than they're talking about, Levin. I think he's got,
like I said, I'm not going to be, now, like you said, they're one game out of the division, so maybe they don't, but I have a feeling he's going to go on IR. That they're going to say, you know what, we're not going to mess around with his throwing shoulder.
Well, and I think that he was hesitant because of what may or may not be going on with that shoulder. Your friend and mine, Marco Martinez, had a really interesting tweet today. And, Marco has got some sources. And Marco said, I'll throw it up on the screen, was told last night that Brock's injury is a tricky one. Was told that a few weeks ago he began dealing with elbow tightness and fatigue, which, by the way, matches up with him wearing the elbow sleeve again, like he was last year when his elbow wasn't 100%. Marco says he then had the shoulder injury that was labeled to me as an AC/labrum injury. MRI was for the labrum. This is a tricky situation to be in for the Niners. This is why we are seeing Daniel Jones being pushed by the media, which is true. There were a lot of reports that the Niners are going heavy after Daniel Jones.
Which they could end up IR and Purdy and go with Daniel Jones.
Yep.
Now, what he means by tricky, I think if you're reading between the lines, is it's something he could probably play through, but there's a much higher chance of serious injury, and he's, for all intents and purposes, in a contract year. So Purdy is probably – the 49ers are saying, we need you. Can you play through it? And Purdy's saying, with his agent's advice, is saying, no, you don't play through that, because if you destroy your AC joint, you will not be getting a big contract.
If Brock Purdy needs any sort of surgery, I do not pay him a single penny after this year. If you want to hold out after 2 major injuries in 3 years, Brock, be my guest. I do not pay him coming off of 2 major injuries. I let him play out his deal, and then maybe we franchise him after the year, or we try to work out a long-term deal. But if you've got 2 surgeries in 3 years on your throwing arm, which is already not the strongest part of your game, I can't give you any money. No, I'm sorry, sir.
Like I said, I would be willing to find a compromise with him. Like a big bump for him in the first year, but something that's way under market value in the first year with an out after the first year. And then if he's the real deal and you want to pay him, all right, then years 2, 3, and 4 trigger at market value, which would be like $60 million a year. But that first year, you're going to get like $30 million, and we can get out of it after that first year if we want to. That's the compromise contract.
Why do I have to compromise?
Because he's not going to play.
Okay.
You know he will not play on that contract.
Okay, that's fine.
He will literally be the lowest paid player in the league next year on that contract. Because the way it works is your draft position directly determines how much you are made. And he was the lowest drafted player, but the salary cap goes up every year. So the minimum goes up every year for new contracts. So every player that's been drafted after him as Mr. Irrelevant has gotten slightly more per year. The last year of that rookie contract is next year. So he's literally the lowest paid player next year on the books.
That's fine. Tough. I don't make the rules, dude. That's what your salary is.
Right. You don't make the rules. That's not realistic. There's a 0% chance he plays on that contract.
That's fine. I'm not telling him he's got to. I'm just telling him I'm not paying it if he needs to get surgery.
But that's not a situation that's going to actually be capable of happening, because you will have a mutiny within that locker room.
Yeah, let's see it.
You will have a mutiny in that locker room. Hey, you're not going to pay the quarterback and destroy any chances of us ever winning anything this year? I don't want to be here. That's what you're going to get.
Who's going to be here? Deebo may be gone. Juice may be gone. Mooney Ward's going to be gone.
If I'm Kittle and I'm Trent Williams, if I'm Kittle, I'm demanding a trade if Purdy is not signed by training camp.
That's fine.
And if I'm Trent Williams, I retired.
Okay. I'm fine with that. Remember, I tweeted last year I'd be fine with the Niners losing Deebo, Kittle, Trent, McCaffrey, all of them, Mooney, Ward, and people came at me like I was nuts. How am I looking now? I'm just saying. You can't get married.
That would be completely throwing away any chance of doing anything next year just because you don't want to give, like I said, some kind of compromise to Purdy.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't think this team's winning a Super Bowl next year anyway. So
I don't think they are either, but that is not a way that you're going to be able to build anything.
You can trade those guys and build them up and get the draft picks for them. That's exactly how you build it up. That's not how you build it up. You need somebody there. That's how you do a complete and utter rebuild where you're starting. We needed a complete and utter rebuild.
I said other than a handful of players, and that's Trent Williams, that's George Kittle, that's 2 of them.
Yeah, well, let's see those guys demand trades. Let's see it actually happen. Perfect Blackness says, no stats. Shanahan is obviously too wedded to his scheme and the personnel to run it. He refuses to adjust to the in-game personnel situation, OC or HC. Again, how did all this good stuff happen for the 49ers if he's just an OC? You can't have it both ways. You got to give him credit for everything and blame for everything, or like you got to decide what you want to do. Mr. J. Fizz says, why not put both of them in there and take turns running the ball, try to confuse the defense with Mason and CMC behind line of scrimmage? I'd be all for that. Start them both out in the backfield, move Christian McCaffrey in the slot, do something like that. I'd be totally cool with that.
So would I, but you're never going to see it because that would take actual creativity in changing a scheme.
Well, we saw some creative stuff. They ran the craziest flea flicker I've ever seen today. That was wild. Like 6 guys touched the ball on the play, and then it was a screen to Deebo on it was a pretty cool play, but you can't do that stuff every time, obviously.
No, but how often do they line up in a weird way?
They're the only ones in the league that run that crazy ass formation where the guy starts out like 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage. I haven't seen any other team do that. Matthew Rowley says, what does Mason need to do to get on the field? Easy. Build a time machine and use it to get his parents to hire a young Kyle to babysit a young Mason. That's not bad, Matthew Rowley. I appreciate that.
He's not wrong. If you are one of Kyle's guys, it's going to take something clear and obvious for him to move off of you.
He loves Christian McCaffrey, and I get it. Christian McCaffrey opens up a whole bunch of other stuff. I get all that. I do think there is room on the field for Mason and McCaffrey, or McCaffrey and Garendo, or whatever. By the way, Garendo had another fumble on a kick return. Man, I'm not on the Garendo train. I am absolutely not on the Garendo train. Heineman says...
Not as a returner.
I'm not as anything. Heineman says, stats, do you really believe Kyle will learn and change? Well, like I said, I think I said it to you, Levin, on Thursday. Whether you want to believe it or not, I do think there's a realistic situation where when Kyle Shanahan's alone in a room, when his head hits the pillow at night before he falls asleep, he could say, we've had a ton of success here and my stuff is working. I was just in the Super Bowl last year. Now, if they miss the playoffs this year, he can't say that. Whether you want to believe it or not that's not my point. You know what I'm saying, right? He could, if you want to say delude himself into thinking that, okay. But if you miss the playoffs this year, you can't sit there and say my stuff is working. So maybe we do see some changes from Kyle Shanahan.
I hope so, because no matter how the season ends, it has not been working.
Fire the Great says it's going to be 2030, and people are saying we can't fire Shanahan after no Super Bowl win. If he's making NFC Championship games and Super Bowls, I'll be happy to have him. I really would. Like, I remember the other side, man. I know what it's like, and I know who the Yorks have hired when they've had opportunities to hire coaches. It has not been good. Now, like I said, if next year looks like this year and they miss the playoffs again, we can have that conversation. I'm fine with that. I want to see, there was one comment right here. Joshua says, Daniel Jones couldn't run the Giants offense, won't be able to run this one. That's the other thing, right? Like, so let's say they do sign Daniel Jones. How the hell are they going to get him up to speed in any amount of reasonable time, especially more up to speed than Brandon Allen or Josh Dobbs, who have been here?
It's going to be tough. You're not going to probably be able to do it next week. It's going to be 2 weeks from now he starts. Look, it's a grasping at straws. If Purdy is at the point that he needs to go to IR, which if the rumors are true that they are pursuing Daniel Jones hard, I would say that means at the very least there is significant concern from Kyle and John about Purdy's arm, because so as we've seen now reported by Marco, had elbow fatigue and now a shoulder injury. So if they have serious concern, that's the only reason to be going after Daniel Jones. If they thought, Purdy will be back next week, they would not be going after Daniel Jones.
You want to hear something crazy? The Niners average more yards per play than the Packers today, 5.1 to 4.9.
That's because when you have a penalty, it takes that play away from happening.
Yeah, and?
So when you have first and 15, and it washed a bad play. Well, I guess most of the penalties were good plays. They got washed away. So, yeah, I guess that's not a logical. I'm wrong.
That's what I mean. Like, people are like, oh, Kyle's regressed. And it's like, oh, wait a minute. With a backup quarterback and all sorts of guys missing and no Trent Williams, they average more than the Packers did in the game. The Packers,
what was the average?
It was close, 5.1 to 4.9.
Yeah, so 4.9 is about a yard and a half below the average for the 49ers under Kyle Shanahan.
Right. Well, the Niners had 5.1.
Okay. So 5.1 is still, as you said, it's close between the two teams this week.
Mm-hmm.
I think the 49ers are around 6.4 for Shanahan's tenure. I looked that up not too long ago.
Yeah. So that's where we are. Here's how bad it was today. Dominic Pooney had 3 penalties, which I don't know if all of them were on him. Jake Brendel got a false start. He's the center. How could he? The last person that should false start is literally the guy that starts the play. There was a quarterback sneak they were going to run where both guards jumped early. And I think that's because Brendel screwed up the snap count. So even though Pooney got the penalty on one of those plays, I think it was actually on Brendel.
Yeah, Brendel flinched, I think. Like his hand started to move. That's how a center gets a false start. A center gets a false, because if he just snaps the ball, the play starts. It's a play.
Right.
But if he twitches, like he goes to snap and then realizes, wait, I'm wrong, but can't stop himself in time, you see those false starts occasionally.
M. Patel says the Packers had no problem winning with their backup, as if the Niners didn't go into the playoffs on a 10-game winning streak with their third-string quarterback a couple of years ago. I guess we all forgot about that, right? When Kyle Shanahan went into the playoffs on a 10-game win streak with a third-round rookie quarterback. That didn't happen.
That's what I said to somebody on Twitter when they said, if Dobbs, you don't see practice. If Dobbs was better than Allen, I'm sure he would be playing. It's like, oh, yeah? We're talking about the regime that had Brock Purdy as the third string and wouldn't play him over Jimmy freaking Garoppolo until they were forced to play him due to injury.
Well, that's a totally fair criticism, but I don't think that Brandon Allen was the problem today. I
don't. But as I said, when you're talking about backups, you're hoping for some miracle plays, and Dobbs brings that more because of his scrambling and crazy plays and the fact that he just, all right, I'm throwing this deep.
Dobbs
might be an interception, might not.
He has a higher ceiling, but also I think a lower floor.
Yes, he does.
I think that again, with the division the way it is, Kyle's not ready to just, YOLO. Just YOLO.
He's never ready for that. That is not his type of quarterback. I do not understand why Dobbs came here, because Kyle Shanahan's least favorite type of quarterback is somebody that goes off script all the time.
True.
And you never know what you're getting.
Yeah, you're not wrong on that. Like, he's never really liked that.
I've got you saying that now too.
Now I say it on purpose. Mr. J. Fizz says Deebo's weak as bleep this year. He doesn't have that monster in him when he first started being that wide back. Remember the movie Rocky?
He's not breaking tackles.
No, he's not. In the Rocky movies, there's a scene where Mickey's talking to Rock, and he's like, you can't fight Mr. T. You can't fight Clubber Lang. He's not. And Stallone's like, why not? What do you mean? Why not? And he's like, because this guy is hungry. He's got the hunger. You don't have that anymore. You've been the champ. Like, that's gone. And I do think there is something to be said for that. The guys on this team that still have it are all the guys that haven't been a part of these extended runs, right? D. Winners, Renardo Green, all the rookies that we've seen, Pooney, obviously. Those guys have the fire. And I think Kittle still does, to be fair. Kittle has been awesome this year. But other than that, like Deebo, where is it? Like Hufanga, he's been there. I didn't really see anything from him so far this season.
Trent Williams has not been there. Juice has not been there. The other offensive linemen are bad just because they're bad.
Right.
I wouldn't say it's in everything. I would say Jennings has the fire.
Yes, he does.
Obviously. But then on the defense, there's some question marks there. We can go there if you want. Fred Warner was on fire to start this year. Haven't seen anything out of him lately. I don't think he's quit, but I do not see the amazing plays from him anymore.
Now, to be fair, I think it was unrealistic to expect him to continue playing at that level because it was so incredible. Like, he was single-handedly keeping the 49ers in games.
Yes, I think other offenses adjusted to that and said, we're just going away from him. Everybody else sucks.
I wonder if he's hurt. He got banged up in the Patriot game with I think it was an ankle or something. I wonder if he's hurt, which if he is and he's trying to play through it, great. But also, if you're going to be out there, you still have to play well. And we have not had a game-altering play from him in a while. Like I said, the Niners dropped 2 picks today, and they had one that was negated due to a penalty because technically Malik Mustafa had one in the end zone that didn't count. But Renardo Green had a chance at a pick that he dropped, and Jair Brown dropped an interception that was in his hands.
This might have been the worst game of Jair Brown's career.
And that's saying something because he's had a couple And Green did not play well today either. Green has not had a good couple of weeks, which, he's a rookie. Like that's,
he was hit or miss. He had some really good plays and he had some really bad plays. He had that breakup where he picked up the crosser coming across from a zone and realized that guy's going to be open and started running deep and was able to get there to break it up.
Mm-hmm. So it'll be interesting to see how this year ends. Cause like I said, it's going to get darker for the 49ers before it gets better. Let me,
they're going to win next week easily. It'll be the first easy win all season, and it's going to give us all hope at 6-6.
Right, at Buffalo. After Buffalo's coming off a bye, they're going to just easily coast, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I think that's what we're all predicting.
Yeah.
Buffalo, the Bears game is not going to be easy either. The Bears are a pain in the ass team. I actually had that game pegged as a loss.
They're improving. Yeah.
Right. They're improving. That's not going to be fun. Obviously, the Rams, we know that the Rams beat the 49ers earlier this year. Dolphins,
the Dolphins have won 3 in a row and have really turned the corner.
It's going to be dicey. Now, let's say Brock doesn't play the rest of the year. Do your expectations for the rest of the season change? Do you expect the 49ers, you say, they probably won't look good going down the stretch the rest of the way?
If Brock doesn't play the rest of the year, Kyle gets his get out of jail free. Because it can be a train wreck then, and you just blame it on, well, I didn't have my quarterback.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. It gives him, if Brock doesn't play the rest of the year, it can get horrendous. And unless you have players outright, if Kittle's going public saying Kyle Shanahan is a problem, then maybe, you know what I mean? But that's never going to happen. Yeah. So, I don't like to say things are absolute, 100% when, there is a potential scenario out there. It's just never going to happen in all likelihood. If you're talking multiverse and 10,000 other universes, there might be one where that ever happens.
Perfect Blackness says, stats, why is it so hard to separate a great play designer from head coaching? Shanny head coaching has been exposed this year. We can't call it out. They were in the Super Bowl last year, dude. Like, again, do you think that these bad head coaches just get to the Super Bowl? Yeah, this year hasn't been great. It hasn't been as good as last year. But the idea that Kyle Shanahan is not a great head coach, I can't have the conversation anymore. I just can't. Like,
this is the difference between you and me on this topic. There is times when a great coach has overstayed their welcome. I don't know that we're there with Kyle Shanahan. I truly don't. The next 6 games are going to tell me a lot when it comes to that. But there is a point where, yes, this coach is really good, but it's gone stale. They haven't been able to change. They can't see the problems because they're still stuck in the, well, look what we've been doing rather than what are we doing right now. And they need a changeup. Andy Reid hit that. Andy Reid at the end of Philly, it was nobody disagreed with his firing. Nobody was like, how could you fire this guy? It was time to go. It had gone stale. I, like you, would give Kyle Shanahan another year unless it's just a crazy finish. But it might actually be true right now, and we will know a year from now that no, Kyle Shanahan was cooked. He needs a reset. He can't do it here anymore. He's not seeing the problems. He's not trying to fix the problems. He doesn't think it's him.
Michael Brown says, do you think that because he made it to the Super Bowl, that makes him a good coach? He made it twice with Jimmy Garoppolo and the last pick in the draft as his quarterbacks. Yeah, I think he's a good coach. Sorry, I do. Name me another coach that can make a Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo. I'll wait, okay?
Name a coach that has made multiple Super Bowls. It doesn't matter if they won or lost. There's multiple Super Bowls and wasn't a good coach.
Right. Again, that's what I mean.
Somebody's saying Marv Levy. Marv Levy was a great coach just because he didn't win a Super Bowl. I don't know.
Hall of Fame.
To be fair, I came in like right as I was saying that. So maybe he's just talking about a coach that lost multiple Super Bowls.
I'll give him the benefit of the doubt.
But like, what coach has made multiple Super Bowls, whether they won or lost them, and was not a good head coach? Somebody's saying Brian Billick. Brian Billick, did he make multiple Super Bowls?
No, I think he only made the one.
He only made the one, and he was a good coach in that year. And he was a big reason for what they were.
Perfect Blackness says, that's why I said this year's stats. Good for you. Matthew Rowley says, when has Shanahan outperformed his roster talent? Kyle seems to only succeed with the consensus most talented team in the league and still doesn't win. They weren't the most talented team in 2019. They absolutely were not the most talented team in 2019. They had Jimmy Garoppolo leading the team. They had a rookie Deebo Samuel was their best wide receiver. They had a rookie Nick Bosa. They were not the most talented team. Doesn't mean they didn't have any talent, but I think that like people are just forgetting, man. And by the way, I just can't. I feel like I have the same conversation over and over again.
Get used to it because that's season's over. That's where we're at.
Mr. J. Fizz says, I've been a Niner fan since the early 80s. I'd rather have Kyle Shanahan as the Niners coach than any other coach, plain and simple. I'm just, everybody knows. I don't want to fire Kyle Shanahan after the year, regardless of what happens this year. I don't care what happens the rest of the year. I don't care if they lose every game the rest of this year. I don't. Like, the guy was just in the Super Bowl. Name me a head coach that got fired the year after going to the Super Bowl, going to the end of overtime in the Super Bowl against the greatest current head coach, the greatest current defensive coordinator, and the greatest current quarterback. That's it. Anyway, that's going to do it for the show.
I can't think of one.
Exactly. Please rate, review, and follow the Gold Standard Audio Podcast Network. Like and subscribe to the Gold Standard 49ers YouTube channel as well. We're live after every single game, after all breaking news. We do a 5-minute 49ers news update that comes out every weekday that has interview clips and everything you need, injury reports to be up to date on the team. Give us a chance. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. I promise you, we won't let you down. Try to enjoy the rest of your night, everybody. And don't be sad that it's over. Be happy that it happened at all. I will talk to you tomorrow.